Well, guys, I'm not in the office, so I know that we have this new addendum, and there's a lot of new paperwork that just has come down the pipeline. And I wanted to give some historical context and give sort of give some sort of like a practical background as to why these things are happening, and to talk about it in sort of a common sense sort of way, so that a lot of the mystery is taken out of this, and a lot of the confusion. And so we'll all recall watching the news years ago, back in June of 2021, over in Miami. In the middle of the night, a huge 12-story building collapsed, and it killed almost 100 people. And in the wake of that, the Florida legislature got together, and they determined that a lot of these homeowners associations were lackadaisical in their maintenance requirements. And so legislation was crafted to help mitigate and to help eliminate a lot of the risk and a lot of the dangers from buildings which are not properly maintained. And so they came up with some guidelines to help prevent future catastrophes, and they're based upon milestones. And there's some certain sorts of criteria that they came up with. And so when we talk about a milestone, well, here you go. I'll tell you, I'm 50 years old, 51. And I'm afraid to go to the doctor because the doctor wants to do some milestone inspections on me that I'm not 100% into. But you have to get a lot of these tests done as you get older to help prevent certain things from happening, so they can catch things early. And the same thing is true of a building. So a milestone that they came up with was 25 years. And remember that this building that collapse was right on the shoreline. So a lot of buildings that are built right on the shoreline are going to have to deal with cathodic corrosion, salt water getting into the rebar and degrading the concrete so that it loses structural integrity, as we saw. So the legislature determined that a milestone was buildings of 25 years of age that are within 3 miles. So if you're within 3 miles of the coastline and you're 25 years old, all right, you're going to need this so-called milestone inspection. We'll talk a little bit about the contents of a milestone inspection in a couple seconds. Now, if you are further away from the coastline, all right, if you're more than 3 miles from the coastline, all right, you have to be 30 years old in order to need the so-called milestone inspection. And they determined that the buildings that are less than 3 stories, so like a 1-story building or a 2-story building, really anywhere, is outside of the context of this. It's not really necessary. So if you live in a typical 2-bedroom condo, if you're selling something that's a shorter sort of unit near the beach, you're not going to need this milestone inspection, no matter where you are. So it's just for 3 stories and above. And so what is a milestone inspection? So when you're talking about buildings, we're talking about structural elements. We're talking about roofs. We're talking about the different support structures and the quality of the concrete and all the other elements that make a building safe to live in and safe to dwell in over the course of time. And so the only people that are qualified to do a milestone inspection are going to be your architects and your structural engineers. And that's who has to complete these so-called milestone inspections. And so when you get a milestone inspection, you say, okay, well, these are the things that need to be repaired. These are the things that you have to look out for. But the real question is how much is it? How much is that going to cost? Enter in the so-called SIRS report. Now, what does that mean? It's just a fancy term. It's just basically what it is. It's a financial statement. They're saying, well, how much is it going to cost to repair all these items to keep the building from falling down? And how long do we have until we have to repair things? And so your typical condominium that you'll see, it has, when you look at the budgets, they have a lifetime on the roof. A lot of roofs typically have like 30 years, and they'll extrapolate the the cost of repair over 30 years, and everybody chips in a little bit of money until they come up with this, say, a magic number. Say it's going to cost $1 million or so to repair the roof in 30 years, and everybody chips in money every month. And at the end of 30 years, you have all of this money sitting around, and you can pay for the roof without this big, massive assessment. So the same thing is true of a SIRS, which is basically SIRS just stands for Structural Integrity Reserve Study. That's all that is. It's just a fancy word for basically a report, a financial report, a deep dive that's going to tell the people that live there and the prospective buyers how much it's going to cost to repair these items. Now, what happened is over on the other coast, a lot of these buildings, it's going to cost them a ton of money to get their building up to snuff. And a lot of these buildings are having these multi-million-dollar assessments, and a lot of people simply just can't pay them. There's, older people on fixed incomes; they've been there forever, so they're having to sell or they just pay a large amount of money. So that's something that's kind of outside of the context of what we're talking about here. So remember, the main things to remember is that you need to be 3 stories or above, and if you are within 3 miles of the coastline, the building has to be 25 years old. If you're greater than that, it's going to be 30 years old. So, and then you're going to have that milestone report every 10 years. It makes sense. All right. As a person, right, you're going to have your blood, you're going to have your blood looked at, or some of these are scans or anything like that every 10 years. Well, the same thing is true of a building. So those certain milestones, once you reach that certain threshold, that milestone, you have to have the structural report done. And then you need to find out how much it costs. And you're going to have to get that from the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. So that's sort of the baseline. This is where all these disclosures are coming from. The consumer, when they're coming in, they need to know, number one, is it required? Am I required to have this milestone inspection completed? And if so, has it been done? And can I take a look at it? And so that's really what these addendums and these new disclosures are really asking for. It's really just they're putting it out there they're making it so that the prospective buyer doesn't have to guess, doesn't have to go through the whole rigmarole of finding out whether or not the building that they're interested in, number one, needs to have these inspection reports, and if they do, they need to be able to take a look at it. So that's really what this is. It's not this big scary thing. And so if you just understand it from a practical standpoint and understand it as a story, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to impart this knowledge to a consumer, or at a minimum to understand it yourself, so you can put it into your own words. So anyway, that's what the milestone inspection and the SIRS reports are all about. That's what we need to understand, who needs them, and that's it. So hopefully that'll kind of clear things up.